Hello everyone, and welcome to my channel. Today I want to talk about a 1957 Western directed by Sam Fuller. This is from the Criterion Collection, I think it's Spine 954, 40 Guns. And I purchased this in the February Criterion flash sale. Sam Fuller was a very interesting director, very cult director in his own time. Came out of journalism, and he pretty much had a style that can be seen as kind of journalistic, and that he sticks to the facts of the story. There's no real elaboration. One could say that it's all prose and no poetry. One could also say it's punchlines without a whole lot of setup. Or more than punchlines, probably punch in the gut would be more like it. But you could see this as a limitation. The French New Wave directors and critics, they saw Fuller as being kind of experimental, and they liked this fact that he was like reinventing how a story should be told. You don't need all this. Many films in Hollywood and around the world in the 1950s had become kind of bloated. Fuller's movies, you could never, there's never any bloat in a Samuel Fuller movie, and he could be, and visually he could be very inventive. He has some he loved using long takes. He loved using tracking shots. There's an amazing tracking shot in 40 Guns where we follow these three brothers as they walk through the entirety of the town. And the story basically is about these three brothers who come to a town in Cochise County. The older two of the brothers are federal marshals. They have an arrest warrant for an outlaw. This outlaw is one of the 40 Guns. He's employed by Barbara Stanwyck, who is the landowner rancher who dominates the politics, the law and order of Cochise County, and has political influence statewide. And Barbara Stanwyck has a younger brother who is a ne'er-do-well. She has to constantly get him out of jams, and he's sort of the villain of the piece, and sort of the progenitor of the narrative, of where the narrative ends up going, at least. So in the telling of the story, Fuller uses a lot of inventive kind of shots and scenes. For instance, there's Gene Barry, who plays the middle brother. He's fun and real good looking, and he goes to the gunsmith, and the gunsmith's daughter knows more about guns than anybody, and the two of them, it's love at first sight. He looks down the barrel. He's checking out a rifle. He looks down the barrel, and in the telescopic view, in the barrel of the rifle, is his beloved. And Jean-Luc Godard references that shot in Breathless with Gene Seberg and John Paul Belmondo. And then later on, when the younger brother is shooting up the town, he's drunk, and he's with his buddies, and everybody's, Barry Sullivan, the older brother, who's infamous for being a gunslinger, now a federal marshal. He's famous for his walk and his stare, and he doesn't even need to do draws. They don't even have to draw because they cower away once they see the walk and the stare. So he walks down in a typical Western showdown. He walks down the middle of the street and towards this drunken young man who's got looks, and oh my God, this is the walk, this is the stare. And Fuller cuts to, and this film is filmed in CinemaScope, the widescreen 20th Century Fox film process, and aspect ratio, and we have and Fuller cuts to a close-up of Barry Sullivan's eyes a couple of times, where his eyes just fill up this wide CinemaScope screen, And of course, Sergio Leone would popularize this. It became one of his signature shots when he made his spaghetti westerns in the 1960s. Fuller was, like I say, he was kind of idolized by the French film critics of the new wave and directors. And Jean-Luc Godard, when Fuller was in Paris for a while, Jean-Luc Godard puts him in his film Pierrot Le Fou. And Fuller playing himself there at a cocktail party. Belmondo doesn't know who he is, and he finds out he's a film director, and then he asks him, well, what exactly are your films like? And Fuller says, they're a battleground. Love, hate, action, violence, death. In one word, emotion. And that pretty much does sum up Sam Fuller's movies. And but they're also, he also plays around with some interesting ideas, masculinity, the idea of masculinity. Barbara Stanwyck is playing a traditionally masculine role. There's a great shot of her having dinner with her 40 guns, 20 on each side of this long table, and she's sitting at the head of the table, and they all quake in their obedience to her. And he also, Fuller was also playing around with the idea of how guns define masculinity, and the inference that a gun makes you a man. And Fuller was anti-gun. I mean, this really isn't an anti-gun message movie, but Fuller has said in interviews that, you know, the right to bear arms is not one of his favorite parts of the Constitution in 1957. That was pretty controversial. Of course, today it would be even more so. And he also plays around with some really funny double entendre lines of the gun as a phallic symbol. We see Barbara Stanwyck wanting to see Barry Sullivan's gun. She's fallen for him and romantically, and he tells her to be careful with it. She fondles it, and he says, "Be careful it doesn't go up in your face." And there's another one too between Gene Barry and his beloved double entendre about the phallic symbol of a gun. And somehow these lines got past the censors. And it's an interest. In 1957, this was a kind of the tail end of the great Western vogue in movies. One of the extras, it says in a couple of years, 1 out of every 4 movies that Hollywood released was a Western. But by 1957, it was kind of dying out, but not so on television. Television was totally dominated by Westerns. I remember growing up Saturday night on CBS was the whole primetime hours were made up of Westerns. Barbara Stanwyck, in 1957, she had made 17 movies up until 40 Guns, and she, but after 40 Guns, she only made 4 more feature films, and they were not really significant roles in those movies. So she transitioned to TV, and eventually she becomes a star of a popular Western called The Big Country, and she's pretty much playing the screen persona that she plays in this movie. And in 40 Guns, she was 50 years old, and she does her own stunts in this film. And in the opening sequences, the credit sequence, it's absolutely amazing. She's riding in a black outfit on a white horse. She's galloping at a frantic pace, and at a prescribed distance behind her are 40 guns also riding horses at a fast pace. And the 3 brothers are approaching the town, and the landscape is treeless hills. We get bird's eye view of the horses are approaching the buckboard that the 3 brothers are in. And we see a bird's eye view, we see it from the buckboard, we see it from the horses, the hoofs kicking up all the dust from underneath. We have a camera they put underneath the buckboard. And then Barbara Stanwyck comes, and she's actually riding the horse, and she has to, you can see her jerk her horse so she doesn't run into the buckboard, and then the other horses too. Spectacular credit scene. There's also another spectacular sequence in the film. It's a tornado, and Barry Sullivan and Barbara Stanwyck get caught in this tornado, that comes up out of nowhere. It's a very well done optical illusion, and and Barbara Stanwyck gets thrown from her horse, and she gets her foot is stuck in the stirrup, and she gets dragged along for a little bit, and she did that stunt herself. Like I say, she was almost 50 years old. She was very spunky. She was a really good actress. She could play this kind of tough role, and you could still see her intelligence. You could still see that there might well be a softer side to her, which we do see in 40 Guns. Gene Barry, who is the plays the middle son, he too, the screen persona that he's playing in 40 Guns, he brought into television. He played Bat Masterson, a Western, and he played a detective in Burke's Law, famous Name is the Game is another television series that he was the star of. And I don't think Fuller made another Western after this. He had made a few before. So overall, I think this is an amazing presentation from Criterion, because the restoration is fantastic. It's got to be one of the best black and white restorations I've seen, and the extras are really good. There's an interview, about a 35-minute interview with Imogen Sarah Smith, and they're always outstanding. I mean, she is just amazing in her historical knowledge of these movies. She's a very perceptive critic of them. And it's one of those interviews where she just is talking. We don't get to see the interviewer. I always like those kind the best. And we have two extras that involve Fuller's daughter, Samantha Fuller. One is where she meets with her mother, Crystal Lang, Fuller's widow, and she was an actress who appeared in several of Fuller's later movies. And we see in the beginning of this extra, we see her in Fuller's, her father's study, and I guess it's a shed that's close by to the house. And it's just an amazing looking place that is just full of books and scripts and ideas from movies, and it's just and we see his desk and his chair, and she finds a shoebox that has the memorabilia, film memorabilia, photos of the 40 Guns, and she brings it in the house, and her and mom sit there and look through the memorabilia, and it's really a heartfelt, just a beautiful conversation, and both of them really knew their father and husband's career backwards and forwards, and all the other movies that were influenced by him. They're very intelligent on that, and very funny as well. For instance, they mentioned that the ne'er-do-well younger son of Barbara Stanwyck in this movie was based on Fuller's first wife, who had a younger son who just used her, and she had to constantly get him out of scrapes, and Fuller couldn't stand him, and he certainly comes to a very brutal finale in the film. And then there's another extra that's basically a full-length documentary. It's 80, 90 minutes long, and directed, produced by Samantha Fuller, in which directors come to this study and they read from Sam Fuller's autobiography. And they very dramatic readings, and they come in one after another. And while they're doing these readings, we see pictures and of the events that they're some film clips of Fuller's whole life, from his early days selling newspapers all the way on to the end of his career. And some of these people, Monty Hellman does a part, when Friedkin, Vin Wenders comes by with a Samuel Fuller stogie in his mouth. Some actors, Jessica Biel's there. It's just Bill Duke. It's really a terrific documentary, and it's one of the things that makes Criterion so good. That I think this was from 2013, but alongside the movie, it's just amazing. Now, there's no commentary on this movie, but what Criterion did do here was they present an audio of Fuller being interviewed in 1969 at the National Film Institute, I think it is, in London, front of a crowd. I guess it was during a retrospective of Fuller's films. And although they don't talk, I think they only mention 40 Guns in passing, but because Fuller was an amazing interviewee, that you would the moderator says, ask short questions, so Sam's going to give long answers, which he does. He digresses, he tells jokes, he recollects, he goes off on all kind of tangents. It's a very entertaining interview. But what Criterion did was they played this audio over the film, so it lasted the same amount of time as the film, which I thought was pretty good, because I always like to watch movies without the sound. Sometimes you really pick up visually, you pick up a lot of things that you might miss while you're watching it with the sound. Those are outstanding extras. You also get a booklet, and 40 Guns is a pretty good booklet. There's an essay in here. It's okay, and then you get a bunch of pictures in it. If you can see, that's the long tracking shot that Fuller had designed to go through the entirety of this western town as he follows these three brothers. And then the second half of this booklet is excerpts from Sam Fuller's autobiography, and this does specifically cover the production history and of the film of 40 Guns, and that's outstanding. So again, overall, this is a top-tier Criterion to get. If you like Sam Fuller, if you like Barbara Stanwyck, if you like Westerns, it's really a must-buy. Okay, well, that'll pretty much wrap it up. Subscriptions, likes, comments. I'd love to get comments if you've seen this film, what you think of the Criterion presentation. I'd love to hear from you. Otherwise, you guys stay well, and I will catch you next time.